I'm recording
So,
now. Do you have to like hit got it or something like that?
yeah, continue. Here we go.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, I think
Okay,
we're rolling.
very cool. All right, Rick, here we go. In three, two. Hey, peace and blessings to you. My name is Jerry B. I am the Entre musician, and so are you. And so is this wonderful brother sitting to the left of your screen. I'm telling you, this is going to be a wonderful conversation. Now, you know, the Entre musician is not a political platform. We are musicians for musicians and other artistry that you're involved in, and we try to highlight people who are making a difference. Now, obviously, you would know what's going on in the world today with respect to Afghanistan and the unfortunate situation. Our hearts go out to our American citizens who are still there, to the Afghan people, to those who are in harm's way. We're really praying for them. Now, our platform is not to point fingers. Our platform is to become catalysts for change. And that's where Rick DELLARATTA comes in. This fine gentleman has had the opportunity to bring peace through his organization for musicians called Jazz for Peace. And we couldn't be more honored to introduce him to our wonderful Entre musicians. Brother Rick, man, blessings, blessings to you. How are you doing today?
Very good, very good, very inspired to to be invited on your show and the timing and everything and the topic. So it's a very exciting moment for me here to be with you at this time.
It is. And not only are you a wonderful jazz pianist, we're going to talk about that a little bit, but the organization that you were blessed to create to help out musicians and creatives in times like this is very timely. Tell us a little bit about Jazz for Peace, and we're just going to take this shovel and we're just going to start digging in how grateful we are that people like you exist to help musicians like us.
Well, the difference between what we do for peace and probably peace as you knew it before Jazz for Peace is, we're basically redefining what peace is and kind of taking the baton from those who came before us and kind of, start running the rest of the way around the circle. So, you have, what peace was known of in the Woodstock era, and
Right.
peace and love, and just love each other, and all these great messages. But what we're doing is we're taking the music of jazz, arguably our country's greatest contribution to the world, and we are using that to help outstanding causes because we believe that the road to peace really is to help those who are helping others.
Mhm.
Because when you help an outstanding cause, you are now helping everyone in that outstanding cause's outreach and periphery. And we have a setup, that's more, it's kind of a capitalist society, it's profit motivated, trickle down economy, that kind of thing. And it's unfortunate because the outstanding causes are not, it's not a setup for them. It's a setup for, those that want to make a lot of money and multinational corporations, et cetera. But now we've reached kind of the rubber's kind of hit the road where if we really want to get out of this mess, we have to help the outstanding causes that are addressing these needs and these problems. Because not only can we solve problems today, but we can stop problems that are on the horizon by helping these outstanding causes. And it's crazy because for every, I mean, I learned all this on the going along. I didn't know anything when 9/11 hit, and we both talked off camera how both of us were so
Impacted.
transformed by that
Yeah.
event.
Mhm.
And I mean, I didn't realize how little I knew because I was taking my cues from, what I was getting in the news and what I was getting here and there. But I had no idea at that time that there was an outstanding cause for every single problem. And some problems have hundreds or thousands of outstanding causes just to address those problems. The problem is we're not helping them enough. And we're not finding the ones that really are the most dedicated and worthy and we're not leveling the playing field, because one thing people don't realize, it's easy for us to think that the biggest and most funded and famous nonprofit is thereby the best.
Yeah.
That may be the case in some instances, but we've come across, one man shows, practically a person with a 2-member board or whatever, that were just mind-bogglingly amazing. So when we level the playing field, and we find that it's really not how old you are, it's not how new you are, it's not how big or small or how rich or how poor, it's who you are. It's who you are. And so, we have come across over 850 of the most outstanding causes have been Jazz for Peace funding recipients. And it all starts with, because we're not anything for peace except jazz for peace. Yeah. So it starts with a little jazz. So I'm going to just play a little something for you, because I did a podcast like a few weeks ago, last month I did a podcast, and I was telling someone about how a very well-known jazz performer, a jazz great, actually a saxophone player named Dave Liebman, was telling me that, I should really, you've heard of him. Okay. Yeah. But anyone in jazz knows who he is. Yeah. Well, we were playing together, and just since you've heard of him, we were doing a week-long engagement in New York City at a club called Sweet Basil. And he lives out in the Pocono. So he was, on the weekend, he was staying at my apartment, and I was staying at my girlfriend's apartment, and we were kind of making it work, Yeah. And so we'd hang out during the day and stuff. And he was telling me, because we had played up, I like to feature at least one song where we kind of almost really make up the whole thing. It's kind of, they call it free jazz.
Yeah, right.
And there was a movement that Liebman was a big part of, actually, in the 70s, was a loft jazz, where they would have these concerts in these big giant lofts in New York City that used to be like for sewing and stuff, and it became a big giant apartment loft. Wow. And you could have concerts in there, and it was called free jazz. The musicians would come and freely improvise. And it was a great scene. And he was telling me how much he misses that and how much that needs to continue. So he was talking to me and said, that thing we did last night, you got to keep that going. He's telling me, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'm going to keep this going. But anyway, that's what he happened to say at that moment. And so as I was talking to and the podcast, the person was saying, we were talking about that. We were also talking about how the word jazz, and very few people know this, jazz is misspelled to begin with. That's why people say, you can make mistakes in jazz and they're really not mistakes, or you can do that. Well, even the word itself is misspelled. So the real spelling of jazz, which I found out when I went to Haiti, because it's a Creole word. It comes from the Creole word J-A-S-S, jazz.
Jazz,
and
okay.
It's a Creole word. And what happened was Haitians were brought to New Orleans. And when those guys were starting that music, they're not going to be playing for kings and queens. I mean, they're just evolving. Right. They're going to play for whoever wants to listen. You know what I mean? And right. they're just looking for whoever will put up with us, because we're creating this music. So the Haitians gave that word J-A-S-S. And when I went to Haiti, there was a big sign, and it said, "Welcome, Jazz for Peace, J-A-S-S." So being that the word is misspelled anyway, I call this song Free, and I just take the S-S and the Z-E-Z-Z off. Now it's Free J-A, which has probably more meaning than anything in today's climate, right?
Right.
So that's what this piece is called. It's freely improvised, and it's aptly titled Free J-A. And what's cool is anyone who turns into any of these podcasts is going to hear something completely different, because I'm making it up. You know what I mean? So your version is going to be completely unique. And it's, I'll keep it short. Yeah. So here we go with that.
Play your heart out, brother.
Okay.
Brother, thank you. You never know what to expect on the Entre Musician. That was beautiful, man. Free jazz. Honestly, I think if I'm not mistaken, I don't know my jazz history and free jazz, that genre to that degree, but I think Thelonious Monk was one who really ventured into that form as well. So God bless you, man. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, well, he was definitely a puzzle piece on the journey to that, because Monk was followed by Coltrane, and actually Coltrane played with Monk.
Right.
So and Monk, actually it was Monk that kind of let Coltrane explore like really a lot, yeah. And that led Coltrane was kind of the pioneer of that kind of free jazz sort of movement that came. So it was right around that Coltrane time, which followed Monk. So yeah. I would say I would agree with you.
Well, I tell you, if I'm writing anything, and I do blog, I do write, you know, as far as lyrics or as far as like, you know, just in writing for the Entre Musician, and A Love Supreme is one of those CDs that I put on just to say, hey, you know, that's going to take me somewhere. And it just really opens up the abstract of your mind to let it flow freely. So I appreciate you, man, sharing that. There is so much to talk about, Rick, with respect to, we talked about, just dabbled into 9/11, which I think was a catalyst moment for you, where you have made this comment to many people about your experience of playing jazz with Iranians and Palestinians and American musicians. And that one little seed of a comment led to the empowerment tree. Can you take us down that journey as to what happened in unfolding that history for you?
Right. So yeah, exactly what you were saying. So, you know, here we have this 9/11 situation, and we have this incredible Palestinian Israeli, just unsolvable disaster that we're kind of still in. And I was telling people just at a cocktail party or a dinner, hey, Israelis and Palestinians come over my house sometimes. I mean, I find myself, on stage, in places with them just playing jazz. I mean, they come here to learn jazz. They get along. We get along. We do stuff. And they were kind of shocked. People that don't really understand were very shocked about that. And one thing led to another, and I got to the point where I was able to do an event at the United Nations where I brought Israelis, Palestinians, and Americans together, musicians, and we performed at the United Nations just so people, wouldn't think I was kidding. I mean, I'm that serious, and that's the thing. I mean, music is a common ground that brings that brings people together in a positive way, and that's really what we need. To solve any problem. I mean, when it gets very difficult. I mean, there was a movie called The Song of the Weeping Camel or something like that, and it takes place in Tibet, and it's a situation where these farmers up there have a camel that was born, and there's a problem between the mother and the baby camel because the camel was an albino. So this whole movie now is so crazy because all they're doing in this movie is trying this, trying that. It's almost like the cartoons when you see Roadrunner and the guy tries to catch him using this trap and he tried this and they're trying this, bringing them certain types of medicine, bringing certain types of food, separating them, bringing them together, bringing in doctors, bringing in this one, bringing that one. At the end of the movie, they say, well, we have exhausted everything. Go get the musician. And they go, and it's a long way where this musician lives, right? So they go, we're on this journey, and this is filming this now. Right. And I mean, it takes like 3 days for them because they don't have cars and all that. You know what I mean? Right. They're on foot and they're on camel. They're traveling by camels or horses. They travel 3 days, get this guy, and they're like, listen, we've done it. You got to come up. He comes up with these instruments, and he puts an instrument. This is only your podcast that's going to have this, so this is funny because this is what's coming to me right now. This is they take this guy takes an instrument. He takes 2 instruments, put them on both sides of the mother camel. They pull the little albino camel, the baby, up to the mother, and he plays music on like a violin or something, and it's resonating on the things on the like instruments that are on the camel. And the music is resonating in there into the camel's body or whatever. And he's just playing, and for hours and hours and hours until the camel starts weeping. And it's on the camera. I mean, this movie, I mean, probably as you can find it somewhere, starts crying its eyes out, embraces the baby camel, and end of story, solved by music. So anyway, this situation, I end up at this event at the United Nations. We do the event, and this is before the United Nations. Actually, I'm sorry, I have to start before the United Nations. This starts at 9/11, and as we talked off camera, 9/11 kind of was where a lot of things started for you and for me. And for me, it started as a poem. So I write this poem just staring because I'm less than a quarter of a mile away because I'm living in the East Village. And I just went up on my roof and I'm watching it from less than a quarter of a mile away. And all I can do is just write words. And so this poem comes out. So now a few weeks later, my first performance after 9/11 was later that month. And it was in Savannah, Georgia. And I read the poem. And the poem touched a lot of people, and even the musicians on the stage were moved. And when I got back to New York, I got a call from a newspaper in Troy, New York, called the Troy Herald. And they called me because I had a concert coming up in Troy, New York. That was my next concert. And it was going to be with these guys that I was playing with, that I played with in Savannah. And we were adding another player. Actually, it was a pretty high-powered band, if you know jazz. It was Eddie Gomez on bass, Lenny White on drums, and Paquito Di Rivera was joining us on saxophone. Yeah. So it was a pretty, it was a pretty exciting gig. And so this guy calls me up to talk to me about it. And he says, we heard about this thing. You read this poem to 8,000 people and they were crying. And what's going on here? What's this thing you read? I said, yeah, I wrote this poem called Jazz Repeats. Oh, well, now I didn't know because he was recording this whole thing. I didn't know. He just called me up. Hey, Rick, because I had, I think he had covered me years before or something. So I didn't know if we were having a conversation. He was writing an article. I had no idea, but apparently he was recording the conversation, and then he was going to write the article from that. So I just told him the poem. Could you tell me that poem? I recited the whole poem. The poem ended up in his article, but not even from the poem, but just talking to me, I happened to say to him in passing, John or Frank, I can't remember his first name, but when we fill our souls up with creativity, artistry, intellectuality, humanity, things of that nature, we have a better chance at avoiding the behavior that leads to destruction. Now, I just said it off the top of my head, but it's true. It's just common sense, kind of. But anyway, that came out in his article because he had the recorder on. I just said that to him, when we blah, 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 blah. And then we kept going with the conversation. Well, his article comes out with that sentence in it, and that sentence gets lifted. And I had no idea to what degree it had been lifted and attributed to me.
Wow.
But it became a famous quote. And I didn't know this about quotes. And I would advise anybody, if you don't know, read quotes, because there's all these great people, and you're reading like some of the best things that they ever said in these quotes. And there's a lot of websites, all these famous quotes, A to Z quotes, this quote, that, quotes about war, that's number 3 on the quotes about how to avoid war list. There's a list of quotes for anything now, and they're all over the internet, and I guess people read them. I didn't know. I had no idea, honestly, the degree. Okay. At some point or other, I saw that it was listed on a quotes website. I thought, wow, that's amazing. That's incredible. Fantastic. I didn't know, though, it had gone literally viral. Wow. So now I'm searching for something one day on, just looking for something that I needed through Google, some past document of mine. And I'm looking on the internet, just Googling it to try to find it. And of course, when you Google something, 15 things come up. One of the things that came up was like some person who had listed his personal top 25 favorite quotes of all time. And I'm like, why would that come up related to me? Well, he had put my quote in there. And so I click on it, and now I'm reading all these other quotes. Actually, I became inspired by that. That's when I started reading quotes.
Right.
I read a quote by Aldous Huxley. I don't know if you're familiar with this guy, Aldous Huxley, but I'm telling you, his quotes, this guy lived in the 1950s, 40s, and he made a quote in like 1959 that is absolutely true about today. So if you'd ever check out like Aldous Huxley's famous quotes, he also wrote a book called Brave New World that everyone's talking about now, because there's everyone's heard of George Orwell's 1984, right?
Correct,
okay.
correct, yes.
So these are the 2 books that everyone's debating. 1984 and Aldous Huxley, Brave New World, as to which we are becoming, because we're kind of getting dystopian here, our society.
Sure, absolutely.
But just to wrap up this question for you, that quote becomes viral, and I now become listed with all of these people that, I couldn't hold a candle to, in my opinion, but, I'm on there, Einstein, Gandhi, me, but they lived it, and it went viral all on its own. Wow. And so that's kind of how one thing led to another. The next thing you knew, from there, I was like, okay, I was asking my manager, you can just explore this idea because of the situation I was telling you about, with people so shocked that, I play music with Israelis and Palestinians. I said, just present this to the United Nations and show them my career, show them the things I've done, so that they know I'm not just, walking off the street here. I've been at this for a minute, and that I want to do this with Israelis, Palestinians, and American jazz musicians. So we did that. And then, of course, from there comes a benefit concert series where, again, I thought maybe there's a handful of causes to address the world's problems, a handful of 20 or 30 nonprofits, and there are thousands of them just in this city.
Wow.
Thousands of them. So there's no shortage of outstanding causes. There's just a shortage of opportunities to assist them.
Now you're absolutely right about that, and you're absolutely right about the power of music with the illustration that you gave. I mean, I'm a man of faith, and the Bible talks about many different instances where, you know, even a prophet would, before he prophesied, he would call in a musician, the musician would play. You know, we know how important music is in various churches. No matter what denomination you may be, that music is going to help unlock a gate. And I remember reading an article about you where you tell the story of a gentleman named Charles Black, right?
Oh
Okay,
wow,
would
yeah,
you
yeah.
tell that story now? I mean, because
Oh,
it's
so
like
cool.
it
Yeah.
helps, that power of music really unlocks ideologies and hard things that you think this is who I am, and that music has a way of getting into your spirit and unlocking that thing. And then we'll talk about Afghanistan a little bit and how Jazz for Peace can help empower musicians. But tell the story of Charles Black.
Okay. Wow. So cool that you mentioned that. So now we're now Jazz for Peace is starting to become something. You know, we're doing benefit concerts, helping outstanding causes, and you know, I know common sense. This makes total sense to me. But now, you know, we're starting to, like, the internet is starting to pick up and become something, and people are starting to look at it, and you can make a website. So now we have to. I'm like, well, surely there's historical justification for these things that I'm thinking. And, you know, one person I knew was Dizzy Gillespie, because I had been an opening act for Dizzy Gillespie, and I shared a dressing room with him, and he had been a jazz ambassador. So I
Yes.
knew about that. But I was like, I also knew there's got to be precedent for what it is that I'm trying to do, you know, if I look around. So we start looking around and we come across this guy, Charles Black. And basically, he was a man that was, he's a super high achiever type guy. You know, he achieved a lot in his life. And so as he got into his 80s or whatever, someone interviewed him. And one of the questions they asked him is, Mr. Black, how is it that, you know, what sets you up? What is it that made you go from just being an average Joe, you know, growing up with all the other kids, to becoming this person who has so many achievements? I mean, he's the author of Brown versus the Board of Education. You know, he served as I believe, a congressman or a senator. I mean, just a big list of achievements. And they were interviewing. And he said, well, I can answer that in one word. They said, what? He said, jazz.
Mm.
And the woman said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, let me tell you the story. And so in this article, he basically told the woman that he was in a Midwest state where he was growing up, basically a racist by default, because you didn't know, you're just a kid, but you're just looking what's around you. And as you drink in what is around you, you're becoming a racist without even knowing it. You know what I mean? You're getting these subliminal messages, you know?
Correct.
So, yeah, so he ends up in a situation where it's kind of a dance or something, and he's supposed to go there. You know, they're sending these people there to find their partners or whatever. You know, guys meet girls, and you know who they're gonna date and marry or whatever. And so he's supposed to be, you know, mingling and trying to pick up a girl probably. So anyway, at some point, he just drops out, basically, because he cannot believe this trumpet player in the band that he's watching. He's watching the musicians, and he's real fixated on this trumpet player. So he basically just decides, I'm just going to watch this trumpet player because something's up here. At the end of that evening, he had made a decision for himself. You know, it's like, you know, how young kids are, they want to make up their own mind about something. Well, he made up his own mind that trumpet player was a genius. A genius. So now he's got this decision that he has made as a young person on his own, making his decision, coming to a conclusion, you know. And this guy is Black. In fact, this guy was Louis Armstrong that he happened to be watching. And he thinks he's decided he's a genius. So now, as the days go by and the weeks go by and the months go by, the questions are just coming up. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be a genius and not be allowed to vote. I mean, that's not going to, you know, that doesn't add up. You know what I mean? He's noticing these puzzle pieces that do not fit, you know, and he decides, wow, he sees a journey in his path. I I know better. I can do something, you know, whatever. So anyway, he just became inspired and motivated to achieve.
Yeah.
And he achieved, like I said, as the author of Brown's Birth as the Board of Education. That one, you know, it's hard for me to forget because it's related directly to what we're talking about. But
Sure.
if you ever look up this guy, I'm telling you, he achieved so much in his life, and he, you know, way surpassed the average Joe, let's say, you know, when
Yeah.
it comes to life achievement. And he accredited to jazz, which again has all of the art form of jazz has creativity, it has diversity, it has,
Right.
you know, humanity, it has all of those qualities that are in my famous quote.
Absolutely.
So using the art form of jazz to do it, we have found that we have accomplished things that you cannot accomplish or rarely can accomplish with filling out those things where 1,000 people sign a document. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Petitions or whatever. Sign the petition.
Right.
Sign the petition. Well, they sign these petitions and the shit still hits the fan anyway. You
Yeah.
know, things don't work out anyway. And
Right.
one big problem, I was just telling someone just yesterday, just last night or the night before, I was telling someone who had sent me a petition to sign, and I said, you know, I just want you to know, I said, you know, we had one example is, you know, we got a call from a guy in Mexico. And now this is happening all over the world, but we addressed it in this instance.
Mm-hmm.
He said, listen, these big hotel chains or whatever, they come into these coastal areas and they get the permits and they bribe whoever they need to,
Right.
and they destroy the wildlife.
Wow.
And he said, we are in a situation that's not even average wildlife.
Yeah.
We have a turtle birthing that takes, it's 2 million sea turtles give birth every year, or there are 2 million are born, something like that. But
Yeah.
we're talking about millions of sea turtles from all over the world come to this little place called Akumal, Mexico. And because there is a coral reef, very, like, you can swim to it. There's a coral reef that he made me swim to it. He put a snorkel on me, go out there and see that. And it's amazing. Yeah. So he said, you guys are the only ones I think that can do this, because we need to wake up the whole community to stand up against this, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So as we were helping outstanding causes, we started to realize, okay, the art form of jazz, yeah, we can play the music for you, but we can also get publicity for your outstanding cause through the event, through the concert, publicity and awareness through the media, through radio, through television, through interviews, through posters, through flyers, all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, publicity. We can also get sponsors for you, because we get sponsors. You know, each event is able to get sponsors, and we know we have templates. We started to develop these as we went along, and we learned from other nonprofits that we were helping. They would show us stuff, you know, and we would learn a little bit from the Red Cross, a little bit from Habitat for Humanity. We'd learn a little trick from Special Olympics. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We learn these little tricks from them, and we pass them forward. So, you know, we can help you get new and prestigious supporters, you know, because sometimes famous people will come to these events.
Sure.
Politicians will come, mayors will come, you know, the senators will come. And a lot of people came, I didn't even know who they were till I saw them at my concert, you know, people that I should have known, you know. Ed Begley Jr. is a perfect example. This guy's an actor, right? You know who he is, right?
Yeah.
And what did I know? Nothing. But he's not just a great actor. He lives off the grid, and he was the first one. He decided to create a house that had zero carbon footprint in like the 1980s.
Wow.
And everyone thought he was crazy. And of course, he turned to be a genius.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's right. And he was the first one to do it. And if everybody had followed him instead of, you know, kind of talked behind his back and poked fun at him, you know, and, you know, I was excited to learn about him, but it's a shame because I may not be the sharpest tool in the shed, but I'm not the dullest either, you know? Like we should have all known, these are the kinds of people we should all know about
Yeah.
instead of which toothpaste to buy or whatever, the things that we are learning, So,
Yeah, right.
so, so anyway, we start learning how to get these sponsors for these organizations, how to unite the supporters they have, and how to grow their donor base.
Hmm.
We make them all VIP guests of honor, and we let them invite their friends, so that we have a VIP meet and greet. These are all things that happen at our shows.
Yeah.
And people started to pick up on it. Wow, these guys are getting, they're strengthening their donor base. They're expanding their donor base. They're getting sponsors at the local and national level. They're getting new and prestigious supporters, and they have all these different fundraising techniques that they share. And it's all different branches of an empowerment tree.
Yeah.
So this guy from Mexico says, you need to come down here and show us how to do that, because we need to stave off we need to stave them off every year, or because there's nobody to represent these turtles, and you cannot just do that. They were here way before us.
Yeah,
You know what I
sure,
mean? I mean, they were probably giving birth in that spot before there were humans, for all I know. Certainly before there were humans in Mexico. I mean, maybe there was, you were going back to the Maya. I mean, certainly the Maya and those people, those turtles were there when they were there. You know what I mean? The indigenous Maya, the indigenous cultures, those turtles were going back to there. And now, boom, this hotel goes up and they throw their waste out there. The coral reef goes down, and boom, the turtles are finished,
Right.
So we went there and showed them how to do that. We did that. And I got to go to Akumal and meet these people and, swim out to that coral reef and, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And, we realized that you can sign 1 million petitions, and these big corporations can pay off stones, and they just still override. Yeah, you know what I mean? That's not enough.
Right.
But they do that event every year on the same day that we did it, using our techniques.
Wow.
And that coral reef is still there, and those turtles are still there.
Well, let me ask this question then, because you bring up a good point with respect to whatever the cause is. Then how is Jazz for Peace able to come and help musicians? I know some articles I read that it doesn't matter what your donor base is or what your notoriety, if you are a quote unquote named musician or a star musician or has any kind of star power. How does Jazz for Peace come in to help a musician in a small town who wants to help out a particular cause or has a dream to do it? What are the basic steps that you use or utilize to empower musicians?
Okay, so there's 2 ways that we empower musicians. One, we actually have artist grants. Okay, an artist grant. So let's say you have some incredible musical project that you want to get off the ground. It's a dream that you have, or maybe you might want to hey, I want to go to some country of my birthplace or something, my ancestry, and perform. Or you have some dream with your music. You have a dream that's related to your music. You're in the same boat as the Red Cross or any nonprofit. You're in the same boat. You have supporters that you need to unite, gather them, and you have to expand that support base. You need sponsors at the local level. You need publicity and awareness. You need all of those branches yourself. So that's how we would help an artist himself, which we have done with our artist grant program. But now let's say you're an artist and you say, I want to use my art to help an outstanding cause. I have this outstanding cause, or my wife is with something, or I'm part of an outstanding cause. Well, Jazz for Peace funding starts with a comment. So it's easy for someone to say, I need to learn everything and get all confused and all discombobulated. It's the best way, and the hardest way, but the best way is to go one step at a time and trust the universe and let Jazz for Peace guide you through each individual step, because one step at a time, they're all easy steps. That's a strange thing. All together, it looks like a lot. It looks overwhelming, but one step at a time, they're all easy steps. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
It's like when you see a goat going up how did he get up that cliff? Oh my God. Well, but it was just one step. Yeah. He just went boom, and then he went boom, and then he went boom, and he
Right.
did it.
Right.
So it's the same thing with jazz repeats. It's so tempting now to to mess yourself up and get all whoa, what are we gonna do? What's gonna happen at step over here? You know what I mean? No, just so the first thing you would do is a person, anyone, they would do what you just did to prepare for this show. I already know you did because you've already told me you've read stuff. They
Yeah.
would just look at some information that Jazz repeats. They would
Mhm.
read articles that you've read, watch videos that the same ones. Now, let's say a person, you know, doesn't know exactly which ones to read. Well, they can just ask us, "Hey,
Mhm.
I'd like to study up on what you're doing." We have a link called jazzrepeats.org/knowthefunder.pdf,
Mhm.
because the three most important words in philanthropy are know the funder. Know the funder. Those are the three most important words. Most people think it's give me money, but
Right.
know the funder. Yeah, give me money is fine, but you're not going to get any until you know the funder. You know what I mean? Yeah,
Exactly.
and we learned that the hard way too, because we got calls from from major organizations, and they wouldn't talk about themselves. They call us up on the phone and they talk about us.
Mm.
And while they're talking about us, we're like, who is this? We get curious. Who are you? The more they
Sure.
talk about us, the more curious we are about them.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? So now, like, hey, can you Google this guy? Google the name, just figure. And we go and we're like, this guy's getting grants up the wazoo. This
Right.
guy's
Right.
got all kinds of grants,
Yeah.
and this is how he's getting them. He's
Mhm.
calling people up and talking about them until they're so exhausted they can't wait to fund them. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
That's amazing.
Yup. And so we had no idea, but that's how we learn.
And you're talking grants. You're not talking
Mhm.
loans, right? There's a difference,
Right.
correct?
Right. And the important difference is a lot of people think, oh, if I get a loan, it'd be such a great thing. No, you got to pay the loan back.
Right.
This is something you don't have to pay
With
back. Okay.
interest.
I mean, right.
Mhm.
You got it. Yeah, exactly. And if you borrow the money off the wrong guy, it's going to be a lot of interest.
Exactly.
So watch The Sopranos or something. But see, here's the thing. I mean, when we say empowerment, that's the key word, and the other key word is enlightenment. Those are like the two most important words that I can think of in relation to what this is all about.
Mhm.
Because when we bring all of your supporters together as VIP guests of honor at this event, and you have a stronger team going forward, you don't have to give any of that back. You know what I mean? You don't have to give that back to us. Now, when we expand that donor base, and now at the end of this event, you have so many more new supporters than you had before, you don't have to give that back. You know what I mean? When the publicity and awareness that you get, whatever that is, and we never know. I mean, we find ourselves on a show that we never knew existed, or in a publication that we didn't know about in that region or whatever. You don't have to give it back after, you know what I mean? And so all of these little things, and at the end, of course, funds which are raised. I mean, we teach you to confirm your event with funds already raised for you and in your bank account. As we go to the other fundraising steps, it's funds that do not have to be given back, meaning it's a grant. That's the definition.
Right. My goodness. Now, I guess the trick question here is are these steps for empowerment to artists just for the jazz genre only, or can rock musicians or pop musicians or rappers, can they take advantage of what Jazz for Peace offers?
That is a great question. And you know what? They absolutely can, because it's just like we've had organizations say, we love what you're doing, but I don't think we qualify because we don't do jazz. Like, well, what do you do? Well, we assist children with autism. Well, we're the jazz. You know what I mean? You're doing something good. You know what I mean? Why do you think you have to be a jazz? You know what I mean? We're the jazz here. You be the people that assist with autism. You know what I'm saying? And it's the same thing here. I mean, if you're an incredible reggae band or whatever, and let's say even another step forward, you're a reggae artist that wants to help an outstanding cause. Hey, we can do that with Jazz for Peace. You know, we can do it, and Jazz for Peace will be there. We'll still be there. We'll play a few tunes of jazz to open your show or whatever, you know, or as a double bill. So there will be jazz at the Jazz for Peace event because Jazz for Peace will be there anyway. You know what I mean? But we've had all kinds of other music and genres and all kinds of other types of acts perform at these events. And like I said, it doesn't have to be a jazz artist that we're helping, and it doesn't have to be a jazz musician who has an outstanding cause that they want to help using our assistance. Because you know, part of what we offer is the guidance. You know, we offer a world-class cultural event at no cost to you. That's already a lot for most organizations. Can't even fathom that because they're looking at all kinds of investment and costs just to get to that level, you know, where they have a world-class cultural event. Now they got to make all the money back that they spent. But we offer a world-class cultural event at no cost to you, plus, and the plus is the big thing, because if we just offered that to you, you know, it might be a zero, because what does, you know, I mean, you know a lot about putting on an event, but what does the person, you know, helping the autistic kids, he might not know anything about putting on a world-class cultural event. So we offer, along with the event, we offer the guidance, the event coordinating expertise, and all of those, you know, the staffing, all of those necessities to make that event a success.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. Many of us did not know that these type of organizations exist. And I know that you go above and beyond that. I mean, you know, with respect to your connections to the United Nations with so many congressmen and senators, and even, you know, endorsement from former President Barack Obama, and on and on and on.
And Dennis Kucinich from Ohio,
state, right? From the Buckeye State, right?
Exactly.
But with respect to education and your commitment to putting jazz back into schools and music education back into schools, I mean, it really is, I think, for those of you who are listening and watching, an organization that you want to get involved in and learn more about Jazz for Peace. Now, I do have a critical question, and I don't even know how to ask it, even off camera. I was thinking, because of the state that we find ourselves in as United States citizen, and watching all of this unfold. As I said, the Entre Musician is not a political platform, but you have been in various areas of Palestine and abroad. When we look at the situation going on in Afghanistan, is there a way that Jazz for Peace can begin bringing about change in helping not only the United States citizens trapped there, but the Afghan people? Is there ideas that are flowing in your organization?
That's the thing, okay? We have these unbelievable experiences, but what we don't have is the people that are running things over there. They don't know who Jazz for Peace is. Now, if they knew, if maybe they got a hold of this show and watched it, I don't know. But if we could connect with them, it possibly could be game-changing and unbelievable. And here's why. These events have been so unique. And like I said, there's been over 850 of them. And they have been so unique that almost anyone who contacts us now, we have something similar that we've already done, and that we can refer to them, you know. And one thing that was just something that happened was somebody wanted to unite Afghans and Americans using Jazz for Peace.
Wow.
And this was in California, and it was in the town of San Ramon, California. And this was an organization that was assisting Afghan women and children. And there was an American community, okay, that wanted to make a difference, and an Afghan community that wanted to make a difference, and no way to unite them. So here's what they did. They said, we want to get you, and we want your program. We want you to, you know, we want to utilize your program and all of the all of the things that you provide with that empowerment tree.
Yeah.
And then we want Jazz for Peace to perform at this event as a headliner, along with this famous guy from Afghanistan named Najim Nawabi. I didn't know who, we had no idea who he is, but they made these big posters with the two of us on these posters. And on the poster, it said, first ever, for the first time ever, Afghans and Americans uniting for the common good. Kind of, that was, I don't know if that's exactly the word, but that was the kind of message, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it was challenging. I felt like they had a lot of courage to do that. And I wanted to support them. I wanted to be a part of this just to see what was going to happen, how this was going to all come together. And they were able to do it. And we were able to learn a lot from it. Okay. First of all, there's probably nothing as far foreign as the music of the United States and the music of Afghanistan. It is so incredibly foreign to each other. You know, I don't know how Afghanistans can listen to our music from what they are accustomed to, and vice versa.
Is it because of the tunings or?
Yeah, everything. It is so amazingly foreign. You know, and don't get me wrong, I've listened to Indian music, I've listened to Chinese music, I've listened to music from all over the world, but I couldn't believe how foreign this music was to me, you know. And but the thing was, we all had a common interest, you know. We had a common interest in our children, in children in general. We had a common interest in, you know, our communities, in family. There's all of these common interests. And we also have a common interest in the arts, even though our music sounds so, you know, so drastically different from each other. Yeah. So, so we have these experiences dealing with Afghanistan in particular, okay? But then we also have the whole rest of the Middle East, okay? We have things that we've done for you know, Yemen Village Ord, I think it's called. It's a orphanage. We've done things for orphanages in Lebanon, for orphanages in Israel, for things in, we've done stuff here in New York for Holocaust victims. You know, I mean, the list is a mile long, but one that's coming to the real top of my head right this second, because you mentioned, I believe, Pakistan, is we went to Pakistan. I went to Pakistan, and it was, I mean, the knowledge that I gained from that was just unbelievable. I mean, that's a country that has very, very little literacy. I mean, they have a spectacular amount of illiteracy. Wow. And we were helping an organization that was teaching mothers how to read, because there aren't enough schools and classrooms to fill all of the illiterate children. Wow. So they need mothers to become teachers. So the mothers would teach classrooms of kids in homes how to read. So this was how they were doing that. And I mean, the story is amazing. It's an amazing story. And you can go to Vimeo.com, which is it's more of a little bit of a higher level than YouTube, because it's mostly movie makers and industry people that put stuff on Vimeo. But anyone who can remember, Vimeo.com, and you type in Jazz for Peace Pakistan, and you'll see an amazing interview that the Pakistani media put on there themselves, because they interviewed me and they took a snippet that they wanted Americans and Pakistanis to see, you know, and that was me basically saying that we need to unite, because we have reached a pinnacle now where, you know, we can no longer ignore the problems that are facing, you know, with our ecosystem, with nature. And I said, you know, birds, when a bird flies, he doesn't know that he's crossing a Pakistani
international border,
no idea. He doesn't have his passport, you know, his COVID ID or whatever. And these, you know, fish, I mean, you know, they have no idea, you know, all of this wildlife. I mean, it's all part of our world. We're dependent on it for survival, and we're destroying it. And we've got to come together. You know, we have to come together. That's common ground, and we have to, you know, and music does it. I mean, this event in Lahore, Pakistan was just unbelievable, you know, but as have been in other countries, you know,
Yeah.
Africa, all over the world. But it was really, really incredible. I mean, I went, they took me, first of all, they took me in a car that had tinted windows. So you'd think it was like John Gotti's car giving me a ride, you know what I mean? But it was like, because they didn't want people to see in. What they wanted to do was, because we were going to areas where Christian churches had been bombed.
Mm.
And we were going into these churches, not churches, we were going into schools of kids who had been persecuted because
Wow.
they persecute Christians there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Right.
I had recently performed in Nepal, which is another amazing country in that region. So like I said, the experience that Jazz for Peace has in these regions with these people
Yeah.
is mind-boggling. And if somebody would just reach out to us or tell us who, make the connection, because, you know, I don't have these guys on speed dial. I don't know who they
Sure.
are
Sure.
that running this, and they don't know who we are,
Yeah.
you know, because nobody wants to do anything except sell them products. You know,
I understand.
our system is not set up to say, you know, hey, you should, you know what I mean? It's only set up to say, hey, you should buy this perfume or toothpaste or whatever.
Right.
And so there's this disconnect. I mean, I don't know who those people are that are handling this with the U.S. and Afghanistan, and they don't know who we are.
Yeah. Well,
You know,
maybe,
but yeah, we have a lot to offer.
absolutely. Well, maybe somebody who knows somebody, because look at how you guys got started. You got started with one comment, you got started with one interview, and it went viral. And maybe somebody who's watching this or who is listening to this podcast can make the connection to someone they know who is close to the
Exactly.
situation, and Jazz for Peace can be that catalyst for change. I'm
That
grateful to you, man. I really am. When we talk about the Entre musician and we talk about people who are just not allowing their gifts to shine, but putting that entrepreneurial courage and that imagination into making sure that this art not just express, but is making a difference in the lives of others, is why we literally exist. And that's why I'm so grateful you agreed to come on to the program. I appreciate you,
oh well,
man.
thank you.
I
Thank
celebrate you
you
and I
so much.
honor you, man.
Oh,
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Now, you know that if you are a sponsor to the Entre Musician, that the interview doesn't end here. The conversation only begins on the other side, behind the backstage pass. So if you are not yet a subscriber to the Entre Musician, go to theentremusician.com, click on the backstage pass, and what you're going to get, which we're going to conclude here, but what you're going to get is some deeper revelation about who Rick DeLlaRatta is. And I just mispronounced his last name.
Rick DeLlarata, yeah, DeLlarata.
So
Yeah.
with respect to that, he's going to talk even deeper from a musician's perspective and some things that you should know. So click on the backstage pass, become a subscriber to the Entre Musician. But to the rest of you, hey, peace, peace, peace on the world stage. That's what our heart is. And we're grateful to know people like Rick who are helping to make a difference. Go to jazzforpeace.org, find out more about the empowerment tree and how you can help become a catalyst for change, because that's what the world needs. We need positive changes happening, and it can happen in jazz, or as Rick said, what, reggae, funk,
Yeah.
pop, rap, whatever has been placed on your heart to make a difference. Jazz for Peace can help you do that. And Rick, I so appreciate you, brother.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's an honor. It's an honor to work with you.
My man. Well, blessings to you. My name is Jerry B. That's Rick DeLlaRatta. Oh my God. Jerry DeLlaRatta. That's Rick. Jazzforpeace.org. This is the first time that I have mispronounced someone's last name. That's how come I don't give you my last name, so you don't mispronounce it. But peace and blessings to you. We're Entre musicians, and so are you. We will see you next time. God bless. Take care.
See you next time.
Oh my God, DeLlaRatta. Jiminy, you know, you said something about John Gotti, you know, getting in the car, and I was like,
Right.
You know, it's just kind of like
And
stuck
then it was
there.
then it went to Gata, right?
Go
You
with
probably, yeah,
God.
you stuck that, right?
Dear
That's
Father.
funny.
Okay, so we're gonna do the bonus hit now, and we're gonna talk
Okay.
about more about you. And we'll spend about, what time do I have? We'll spend a couple minutes in regard to what you think entre musicians need to know. What, we'll talk a little bit about Jazz for Peace, but they can get that on the front side.
Right.
With respect to you, major touring that you've done, different lessons that you've learned as an entre musician, and what you think
Right.
that they can put in their tool bag to become successful. Is that cool?
Sure.
All right,
Absolutely. Great idea.
here we go. 3, 2, a peace and blessings to you. Welcome to the backstage. I'm with Rick DELLARATTA. Listen, you need to go back and check out the interview that he did. He is the founder and president of Jazz for Peace, and they are doing excellent things. Go to jazzforpeace.org. You'll see it at the top of your screen. But here's the thing. We talk very little about the man behind the music and the man behind the organization. And he has some incredible advice that you want to take with you and put in your tool bag so that you can become a successful entre musician. Rick, welcome to the backstage, man. Blessings to you, brother.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Great to be here.
Man, you are an incredible jazz musician. In fact, you did us a blessing by playing some free jazz for us at the podcast. So how did you get started, man? Were you playing from like 3 years old, or what's going on?
That's funny you would say that, because I was really playing free improvisation when I started, because what happened was I was staying up every Christmas trying to catch Santa Claus coming, because I wanted to actually see him. And it wasn't working out. I mean, I was like, my eye, they were just closed shut, and it'd be the next morning. Sorry, you missed him, So I was upstairs, and I was not going to be denied this time. And I was going to just force myself to stay awake and see Santa coming into this house with his reindeer and everything. And it's late at night, and my parents are having none of it. They're like, get up there, don't you sneak down here. You know what I mean? That's not what you're supposed to do. The children are not supposed to see Santa Claus, but I'm like, I'm going to see him. So the door opens, something comes in the door, and I peek around, and I see a big fat guy now moving a giant thing into the door. And I don't want my parents to see that I'm seeing this. So I'm just getting a little glimpse. But I'm figuring that must have been Santa Claus moving whatever the hell that was into this house. So the next day comes, and there's a big giant piano in the house.
Yeah.
And the reason there's a giant piano in the house probably is because my father was starting his practice out as a lawyer. And, I was the firstborn kid. So we were, he was just in the early stages, and probably he probably did some work for a piano company that paid him with a piano. You know what I mean? So,
right.
So, yeah. And my mother did play piano. So it was all a good thing. But, that was probably because there was a lot of this. There was, when you start out a law practice, at least I know this from being, growing up in it, you get a lot of barter stuff, you know what I'm saying? Because they don't, you're not well known enough to really get the cash from you got to work with them. So this guy, his turned out he was an Italian guy, big fat Italian guy named Andy Giotti. And he's just a fat Italian, and he was he owned a piano, he moved the pianos in, he owned the piano store and all that kind of stuff. Right. Nice guy. And, but I thought it was Santa Claus, and I wanted to know what the hell Santa brought into this house. So when nobody was around, I walked up and started tinkling the keys and listen, play. And I'm like, wow, I could probably learn this on my own. I could probably learn this by myself, but I don't want anyone to know. This is the secret. So I went up and tinkled around on that piano whenever I thought I would not get caught. Basically what I did. There was no, I couldn't sit on a bench. I was too little. I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I just stood there and played like this. Yeah. Well, I got ratted out by every Tuesday or every other Thursday or something like that. We had a cleaning lady named Florence. And she used to come and she used to bring her daughter who was like, not, she was a little bit like she had some issues at birth, you know what I mean?
I
Some
see. Yeah.
issues or whatever. So
Mhm.
rather than have to have a babysitter for her, she would bring the daughter. So the two of them would come and, they just do whatever they did. You know what I mean? I just
Sure.
considered her part of the family,
Yeah. Right.
Florence. I didn't think of her as an employee of any kind. You just Florence is coming.
Right.
But
Right.
she told my mother, probably because I never told her not to tell anybody. I figured I'd outfox her too. So I just didn't want anyone to catch me. And I think Florence told my mother, hey, your son, there's something's going on with him and that piano. So my mother comes up to me one day and she says, Ricky, now would you like to take piano lessons?
Mm.
And I said no. I don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
what piano? Piano? Is there piano in this house? Like that, really. So she kind of like, okay. And about 3 days later, I thought I had deflected that. Now I thought it was success.
Of course. Of
I can
course.
go back to my little secret.
Right.
3 days later, she says, Ricky, I'm picking you up from school today. I'm going to pick you up. So she picks me up. I didn't know why. She didn't say why. Drives me to a piano teacher's house.
Mm.
So that's how it started. So now
Mhm.
I had two problems. I had to figure out the piano on my own, and I had to practice what the teachers told me. So I had double the workload.
Exactly. Oh my
But I've
goodness.
always been trying to figure out the piano on my own ever
Yeah.
since I started, since those first days.
When did you start
But,
writing your original music? When, how long after the lessons began?
well, I started like composing or improvising or coming up with little pieces in my teens for
Hmm.
sure, because
Yeah.
I went to a summer music camp. It's like 1,000 kids or something at the summer music camp,
Hmm.
and I had written a piece, and I had gotten the best, jazz or improvising players. They were teachers really to
Right.
play the piece because I showed it to them. They were impressed, and I got voted because there was most this, most that, most likely to blah blah blah. I was
Yeah.
voted most creative at that camp, so
Uh-huh.
I was like, wow, if they're gonna, maybe they're trying to tell me something by that. So
Right.
I figured I better keep composing because if they're gonna vote me like that, was like I thought that was the coolest one to get, most
Yeah.
creative. You know what I mean? So I was
Right.
like, maybe this is a hint that I need to heed. So I just kept
Exactly.
going from there.
And so what about bands and recording? Are you a teenager at this time? Your early 20s or?
Well, so basically, I was in homeroom class,
Mhm.
and the homeroom teacher comes up to me, and he's like, "Rick, I hear you play the piano. Can you play a keyboard?" I said,
Now,
"Well,
what
if it has
grade?
keys
What
on it, I
grade
could
is
probably."
that? What grade is
I
that?
believe it's in seventh, eighth,
Seventh?
or ninth
Okay.
grade.
Okay.
Yeah, it could have been seventh, all right, but it was it wasn't elementary school. It was after. Where do you go after elementary? Before high school, right? Middle school?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
After elementary,
Middle
junior
school.
junior high.
Junior
I
high.
don't know.
Yeah.
Junior high
Middle.
school. So it was that seventh, eighth, ninth grade deal. Then you go to high school. At least that's what we did. I
Yeah.
went to another school, junior high school. It was in Oneida Junior High School,
Mm.
and I'm in homeroom class, and this guy wants me to play with his two sons, and they have a band that's going to play all the school dances.
Okay.
So I was like, I'm in on that because girls, are going to be at those things, and
Number
we're
one
going to
motivator,
play. Well, it's a big motivator, right? But
right?
we're also another motivator is we're going to play the songs on the radio. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we're
Not
going
the
to play
sheet
like,
music.
yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to use sheet music to learn them. You know what I
I
mean?
see.
It's
Yeah.
like, but it's like I was studying classical music with my teacher. I wasn't studying, the
You and
latest,
the contemporary.
yeah, like we were playing what's that Grand Funk Railroad song? We're an American Band
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
by
Yeah.
Grand Funk Railroad.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was that whatever that year was, that was the year I was my first band. And we're playing like we're an American band, and like that's on the radio. We're playing Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting,
Oh
that
yeah.
Elton John song.
Right.
We're playing like all songs that I was listening to on the radio. So I thought that was really cool.
Absolutely.
Now, at that point, my mother dumps the church on me because she was the church organist, and she slid out of that and slid me into there.
There you
So
go.
now I'm doing the church organ. Yeah, so I'm in the school this band with the school kids with my school kids. I'm in my mother's church thing, and then there was a grown-ups band. They needed me. And they were playing, private parties, weddings, and they had gigs every weekend, out here and out there and out somebody's house, somebody's backyard, somebody's wedding, somebody's, a big, whatever they call those, banquet room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They had all these bands, and they needed me to, sing a couple songs here and there, and basically, be the keyboard player, because I was the most trained musician in a lot of these bands. You know what I mean? It was like these guys were, they're just guys that play. They have jobs. But they play on the weekends. Yeah, those kind of guys. So I started playing with them. And that was interesting because I'm getting into a lot of places that I shouldn't be getting into. You know what I mean? So I'm getting to see a lot of stuff. Yeah, because no one's carding me. Because if you card me, you don't have a keyboard player. So.
Right.
Yeah, so I had all three of those things going on at the same time. And then I'm in the school band. So, yeah, I was pretty busy. I had to quit my paper route, basically.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. You learned that you can make money in music, and you didn't have to do the day job.
The only job I've ever had other than music was paperboy.
Wow. And you've been blessed to tour all over the world, not just nationally, but internationally. And what has been the most challenging thing for you as an internationally touring musician? What do you think has been the most challenging thing?
Well, the most fun about it, weirdly enough, is people are it's kind of weird to go someplace with me, because when I go into a restaurant or a function or whatever, one of the workers are always foreign. And I always I'm like, where are you from? Are you from Puebla? I'm surprised you knew I was Mexican, but how did you know I was from Puebla, Mexico? Do you know what I mean? And sometimes I'm like, you're from West Africa, right? Why did you know West Africa? You know what I mean? So the thing is, it's like I've always been, and I've always been to where somebody's from, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I've always been there, and now, they're so excited because I'm in their world instead of they're being in our world. You know what I mean? Right. Yeah. So I'm talking to somebody about, their Barcelona, you know what I mean? And Absolutely. I played in this little, I know that place, we go there, blah, 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 and I went to this little, blah, that's a cool little, and so that's kind of one of the coolest things, is that you just have this connection with so many different types of people,
Understood.
When I walk past, I'll be walking with somebody and we'll walk past African people, real African people from Africa. Right. But the person walking with me has no idea. But I'm picking up their energy and they're picking up mine. Wow. And they're like, this guy knows who we are and he knows, you know what I mean? And so I stop and I start talking to them and they're like, hey, blah, blah. And I've been to Rwanda and blah, blah, blah. And we're going on and we're like, you know what I mean? And the person standing there, wow, how did you know that? I said, I can just tell that they're not American. You know what I mean? I can tell. And as we get closer, I can tell what part of Africa I think they're from. You know what I mean? So Absolutely. Interesting stuff like that. Yeah. So that's kind of the fascinating thing. Challenging.
So that's the most fun, but the most challenging has been.
The most challenging. Okay. The most challenging for me is it's twofold. Okay. So I would say the most challenging for me, one of the most challenging things is to have a sense of trust in some form of a higher spirit. You know what I mean? Like you have to give up a little bit and say, hey, the universe is going to come do me a solid here. I hope, because I'm going to put a little trust in that. You know what I mean? So it's twofold. One, you have to kind of trust a higher power. Put some trust in a higher power that things are going to come together. And second, you have to really be on your toes. You know what I mean? Like you can't, if it's a music industry thing, and let's say it's the Montreux Jazz Festival, that's a different ballgame, because they're going to have things in place. You know what I mean?
Right.
But let's say it's Rwanda or Pakistan. You've got to okay, I'm going to bring a sustain pedal because they tell me there's the keyboard there, but I don't know if, you know what I mean? I'm
Sure.
not going to, yeah, like you have to remember all kinds of little things. I'm going to bring a sound module because I can fit it because they're telling me. And sure enough, you get over there and they give you a keyboard with no sustain pedal. Luckily, you had one and it's double polarized. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
I'm going
Right.
to bring an adapter that can plug this into blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? You have, in other words, you have to think ahead.
Gotcha.
You have to think ahead.
Gotcha.
So it's very challenging. I would tell musicians that they need to get accustomed to thinking ahead, outsmarting what could go wrong, anticipating it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know,
Absolutely.
you can do that a little bit with a philosophy called Stoicism. So since I'm talking to like music entrepreneurs, I would say check out this philosophy. It goes back to the Roman emperor, and it's a guy named Marcus Aurelius
Yeah.
who ruled Rome for like 32 years. Most people know him because he was a character in the movie Gladiator.
Right,
Not
right.
a lot of people saw that movie. Okay, but he was a Roman emperor that basically he wrote all of these little notes in a book that he never wanted anyone to see, and it was found and published after he died, and it's called Meditations. And it's kind of a foundation for a philosophy called Stoicism. But one of those philosophies that he teaches is kind of imagine a possible worst case scenario and prepare for it in advance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like imagine a worst case scenario and that you would and how you would survive it.
Didn't have a plan.
You see what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's something I would suggest because, you know, like a lot of times if you're a traveling musician, you're going to a place you've never been to. You're going to a country for the first time. You're going to a place that doesn't speak your language. You know what I mean? So it's good to anticipate all of those things.
That's good. That's very good advice. Now, what do you think the most important lesson that you've learned? I mean, you've put together this incredible worldwide organization, Jazz for Peace. You've recorded and toured with some of the top musicians of our lifetime. If you can distill all of that down to the most important lesson that I've learned, and you would freely share that with an Entre musician, what would that be?
Okay.
And you got to go, right?
Right. Well,
really
I would, you know what I would say? I would say gaining perspective. Okay? Because we are given an ideal of what's supposed to be good, what's supposed to be bad, what we're supposed to do, where we're supposed to be. You know, if being famous is supposed to be such a great thing, you know, there's all of these things, and we buy them because we don't know better. You know, I'm speaking for myself. We don't know better. We just buy into it. You know, and so basically, you've got all these people, let's say, wanting to sign a record contract. Well, sometimes a record contract is the worst thing you can do. You see what I mean?
I do.
So, yeah. And you know what? Sometimes becoming famous is the worst thing. Sometimes becoming rich is the worst thing. You know what you should do?
That is so good.
Because you know when you really figure it out is when you look at the actual lives of the people who got those things that you think you're less of because you don't have. And you see that, wow, what a nightmare that was. You know, the guy that, you know, I mean, look, I see people with everything that's on that chalkboard and they committed suicide.
You know what?
You know what I mean?
You were reading my notes last night. I don't know how you got access to my iPad. Okay, but I'm putting together a lesson, and that's absolutely it. The title of the blog, which will be a lesson here on the Entre Musician, is "Don't Be Afraid of Success," and the subtitle is defining what success actually is. Because you're absolutely right. If you don't define success for yourself, you'll accept the world. The world will say this is successful, and those same people who had that perspective committed suicide. They're on drugs. They're doing all manner of evil because they don't know who they are and they didn't know where the goalposts were. Okay, so
Right.
success for
Right.
me is I don't have a million followers on this platform. I don't. But you know what? The few I have, there's an organic, engaging relationship that's happening. And it's a
Right.
growing thing because I know them and they know me.
Well,
My,
and listen,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, check out my perspective of you, okay? I mean, I can go on a show and I can see somebody who's being watched by millions of people, but he's never going to say anything that's going to have a profoundly positive effect on even one person.
Gee,
You know
man.
what I'm saying?
Wow.
And not only that, he has to say what he's told to say every night.
That's
You know what I mean?
So I do.
If you put that in perspective and you look at you, you're like a golden boy compared to him, because you have a freedom to, you have all kinds of freedom to do what you want to do, what your contribution is. And as part of yourself, part of who you are is being defined by what you're doing. And like I said, you're putting out shows that have a chance of having a profoundly positive effect, even if it's on one person. It's better than the 10 million people that are watching him.
That's right. You know,
because
go ahead.
If you having a profoundly positive effect on one person, that could be the Charles Black of tomorrow. And it probably will be.
That's right. No, you're right about that. And I say things that, and not just in this blog that I was writing last night, but, things like, my wife loves me. We've been married 27 years. My children respect me. I'm grateful for the things that I have. And I know of musicians right here in my community who have given their lives for their career, but their children don't know them. They have strained relationships. They've been divorced 4 or 5 times. Now, I'm just saying, I'm not saying that to disrespect them. I'm saying that the choices that they have made have negatively infected that next generation, because now their children don't have that camaraderie. Yeah, he was the best keyboard player of all time, but what of it? Yes, she won 12 Grammys, but what of it? It's crazy. We need to know what's happening at the ground zero level and live positively, because if we don't, then it's over. That's done. You've wasted your life. You've wasted the time and the gift that you've been given.
Right. And here's the other really strange thing now, okay? When you do something that's monumental and it's making history, there's usually not very many people there.
Wow.
See, we're all thinking in our mind, you know what I mean?
That's so good.
I want to get up. Yeah, I want to play in that stadium for 50,000 people. And wow, I really made it, And yet, if you really do something that's transformational, there's probably going to be nobody there on that day that you did that. You know what I mean?
True.
And that might not be found out for months or years later. There's things that can happen. Sometimes when you're in the big time, you're cut off from the real time. You know what I mean? The thing that you really could do that would really make an impact on who you are and what you're meant to be on this earth. You have to consider that. So that perspective is important. If you have a chance to, I remember, I was playing with the Platters and we were playing to these big giant audiences, but I knew damn well, you know what I mean? That wasn't going to define me as a musician. Those people in the audience thought I was a big success.
Yeah.
But I knew I was just, I had a gig I was happy to do, blah, blah, blah. But, I was not going to be able to hang my hat on, that wasn't going to be, you know what I mean? You have to put, so that's why I said, defining. So perspective is so important. And when you are becoming who you really are, I mean, look at the people that you look up to. Did they have it easy? You know what I mean? Right. I mean, did Moses have it easy? I mean, these guys had it rough. So if you're going through a rough time, it might be the right thing you're doing, even though it's a brutal, rough, difficult situation. It was the right thing when Moses did it.
Right.
And it was a pain in the ass and it sucked.
Right. That's right.
But it was the right thing.
But it was the right thing. And generations were impacted because of his obedience to do the right thing.
Right.
It's amazing. Exactly. Absolutely. Listen, this cannot be the last time that we have a conversation on the Entre Musician. It won't be the last time we have a conversation offline, but it can't be the last time that you show up on this platform.
Thank
This
you.
can't be.
Yes, I'm honored to contribute. Really am.
And tell Debbie personally, I said, thank you for knocking on my inbox so many times on LinkedIn, because she kept you in front of me.
And now I'm putting it together because, Entre Musician, it's hard to, entrepreneurial. Wow, she was so right. This is a great match, really. And I love what you're doing. She got me to look at this and say, wow. And now that I really see it, I'm like, whoa. Yeah. A show for entrepreneurial musicians. That who's doing that? Only you. Only you, right?
By God's grace. By God's grace.
And I love when somebody does something that nobody else is going to do it unless they do it. Because I find myself in that position. I find myself in the position that needs to be done. But if I just sit here, no one's ever going to do it. So right. I'm glad there's a show for entrepreneurial musicians.
Me too. I'm grateful, and I'm grateful for Dave Ramsey's people not coming to knock on my door, because actually I read the book. He has an incredible book, Dave Ramsey, called The Entre Leader. And when I read that book, I was so impacted by it. I thought, hey, if you took all of these concepts, Dave is a financial guy, but if you took all of these concepts in leadership and applied them to musicians, then we could be brighter, smarter. We can have that perspective you talked about. We can gain ground, because for the most part, it's just waiting for someone to discover us. Even though the record industry is, or the record companies and labels are a thing of the past, and you may not want to sign that multi-million-dollar whatever contract. The thing about it is, you have everything that you need right now, today, to make it happen. And whether you have an audience of 500 or 50 or 50,000, it doesn't matter. You can succeed in doing this because you are who you are.
Right. And the other thing is, you can never lose perspective of what wealth really is, because wealth probably is 80% from within and 20% external. You know what I mean? Absolutely. Because and here's the weird thing: while we're sitting around maybe feeling bad because we're not, the world isn't giving us the deal that we think we deserve for our talent and our abilities and all that stuff, we are the generators of wealth, of inner wealth.
That's correct.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So if we want to, we can just enrich ourselves all day long by focusing in the right direction. That's right. You know what I mean? And then by doing that, usually we find that, well, geez, I don't have $1 million, but damn, I'm not starving either.
Exactly.
And I don't really want for anything. I mean, yeah, I like this kind of food or something, but I don't really need it. I'm not really, I'd have to go out of my way to go down there and eat that.
That's correct.
Dinner. You know what I mean?
That's correct. Or, well, there's a lot. I want to cut it here because man, we can go down that street, but thank you, Rick. Thank you for being the person you are. Thank you for Jazz for Peace. Thank you for your incredible music, for the gift that you didn't leave in your own little world, but you helped to empower other musicians to do what they can do. We are indebted to you, my friend, and very grateful. Very grateful.
Thank you so much. Now, we're offline now, right? Are we off camera or
not yet? But I'm going to cut that part out of you asking if you are, so I could give the outro.
All right.
It's all good.
Yeah. Basically, you'll send a link to Deborah when this comes out or whatever. It comes out on YouTube. Okay, I'll just double check.
YouTube and Apple Podcasts. So I'll send that link to you. I'll send the blurb. I'll send the because I usually do a weekly teaser of what's happening this week on Entre Musician. I'll have Deb to send me an HD photo of you. You know what I mean? So that I could promote that side by side to the little video that I do. But let's do the outro.
Okay, cool.
Let's do the outro here. So Rick, thank you, man. I really appreciate you. And you are the epitome of an Entre musician. You've been very generous with your time, and this won't be the last time you're on the platform. Peace and blessings.
Thank you so much.
So Entre musicians, Rick, DELLARATTA, jazzforpeace.org. Go to it, learn how you can contribute to the empowerment tree. It's all for you. I mean, he set up everything for you. It's going to be great. And get into more of his artistry. You can find that anywhere online. Great jazz piano, wonderful music. You're going to enjoy it. Peace and blessings to you. My name is Jerry B. That's Rick DELLARATTA. We are Entre musicians, and so are you. We'll see you next time. God bless. Cool. Now we're offline. So yeah, I want to talk to you at some point. I have another interview scheduled for 3 p.m., but I want to talk